I think you're in for a treat. This is a video I hadn't planned on, but I wanted to share with you Hanukkah. I know you've heard about it, but I wanted to talk to you. First of all, I wanted to talk to you because I'm Jewish and I've been talking with coworkers at work, and I don't know how many of them actually understand. I don't know how many people in general understand that much about Judaism. Sometimes I think that people think of Judaism as like a light or a variation of Christianity. It's not. It's very different. It's unique. It's wonderful. It's special. As I venture to say, all religions are, at least not the cult-like, destructive kind. You know what I mean. I want to share not only the academic Jewish meaning of Hanukkah, but what it means to me. So I have and I also wanted to make a confession. I have my menorah, kidding aside. Okay, it's going to make some joke about confession and religion. No, that's not Judaism. I want to make a confession that this is, in some sense, very special to me these past few years especially because my mom died at the end of 2018, and since then I really haven't been able to celebrate. I haven't had family members to celebrate with, and as you know, religious holidays are best with friends and family, and so sometimes I've had candles to sound like, boy, there's noise. As you can tell, I'm living in an apartment, so there's knock, knock, rattle, rattle everywhere. Okay, I'm going to try to ignore that. Okay, there would be candles in these, and in these holes, and you're supposed to light a new add a new candle for each night of Hanukkah. And being alone in an apartment, and I don't really have Jewish friends around me. Of course, there are Jewish friends on the internet, and that's why I don't quite feel comfortable saying I don't have any Jewish friends. But I'm not married, and that's a whole other thing. Again, if you've seen my earlier dating video, what I'm looking for in a girlfriend, that would mean something here. If I had a Jewish wife or Jewish girlfriend, I'd be able to celebrate with her, but I don't. But I have you. So, all right, so this is one opportunity that just came to me. Might as well mention. If you didn't know how to spell it, that's how you say menorah in the English. Okay, I'll get into the history, fascinating history of the holiday, but let me explain just the basics. This is the menorah, this is the Hanukkah. Now, menorah, as I understand it, simply means light, or in Hebrew means light. Menorah would be something like lamp, and Hanukkah would refer to the lamp used for Hanukkah. Now, Hanukkah, there are different spellings of Hanukkah because it's transliterated from Hebrew. Sometimes when people ask, like, how do you spell Hanukkah or something, I'm tempted to say, well, it's spelled Chet Nun Vav in using Hebrew letters. No. Okay, a little bit of Hebrew language for you, okay? The Hebrew language basically consists of variations of 3 and 4 letter, what are called shorashim, or root words. So Chanach, that's Chet Nun Chet, or final Chet, means dedicate. It refers to dedication. So there's a character in the Bible called Enoch. In English, it's translated as Enoch, but actually his Hebrew name is Hanoch. If you look at the actual original, yes, the Bible, the Old Testament was actually originally Hebrew, is actually originally Hebrew. It's what we Jews call the Tanakh. And of course, the Christian Bible was added onto it. So in Genesis chapter 5, I'm a good Hebrew, Jewish scholar, biblical scholar. By the way, I plan to script a new series of videos, creating a new playlist on how to read the Bible. Not only how to simply read the Bible, but I mean the equidistant letter sequencing, finding codes in the Bible, how chiasmus, a literary ancient pattern, way of writing poetry or literature was done. It was called a chiasmus style. Fascinating things. And I want to interview, there are two authors I want to interview. I want to interview somebody who developed his thesis called The Woven Torah. He also wrote a book, and you can check out his website. You can actually check out his whole book, published book, at chaver.com, I believe. I don't think it's org, com. And basically, he presents evidence of several different things. The reason for the two deities, Yud He Vav He. I believe that name was pronounced Yehovah, but people say Yahweh because frankly, in my opinion, they don't know any better. I mean, they've been misinformed. And Elohim, those are the primary names for the deity. Almost as if, and he mentions this, he describes this in detail, how they seem to be two separate parts of the same entity, but they're referred to almost in two separate, almost as independent entities. But I'll get into that in future videos. I want to interview him, and I want to interview, or at least talk about, another theory or thesis that jives with that, and that's something more geometric and presents at least a possible explanation for a contextual explanation for things you see in Kabbalah. Yes, Kabbalah is integral with Judaism. In fact, there's so much Hebrew in Kabbalah. I mean, that it's intertwined. You can't really fully understand Kabbalah without understanding the Hebrew language, and it's not just something that was put on as an adjunct onto Jewish culture. It grew up. It's part of going all the way back. It's part of Jewish culture. All right, so I'm feeling more comfortable, by the way, doing these videos, and I don't know whether I'll be able to have a backdrop back here or whether you'll be seeing my green curtain back here, but I'm going to try. If you don't see my green curtain, if you see weird whatever thing I put behind me, I haven't figured out what yet, that'll mean that I figured out how to get the green backdrop to work, the green screen to work. I tried it before and it worked when I held up a green thing and it worked, but it's just, anyway. All right, okay, back to today's topic. All right, so this is a menorah. The holiday is Hanukkah. Yes, the Genesis chapter 5, the character Enoch, that's the English transliteration. The actual name is Hanoch, which means I would translate it as dedicated one, and it's the same root as Hanukkah. That's a feminine form of Hanach, and it refers to dedication. And that I'll get into in the with the history, with Antiochus. Okay, so basically, how do you celebrate Hanukkah? Well, when do you celebrate Hanukkah? Well, it's it's celebrated on the 25th day of the month of Kislev. Jews, in their observance, refer to the Babylonian calendar, and I say refer to because in the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, those months aren't really referred to, but essentially Jews spent so much time and absorbed so much culture. I don't want to say that. You know, they adopted the Babylonian calendar. So you have the beginning, one of the, yes, there's more than one beginning of the year. Well, at least the Babylonian beginning of the year is Tishrei, and then you have another beginning of the year. You have a beginning of the year prescribed in Passover, specifically in the Torah, that this should be the head of the year for you. But then the Babylonian year began in the month of Tishrei, and that's where you have Rosh Hashanah, which literally means head of the year. And then 9 days after that, you have Yom Kippur, which is the highest holy day in the Jewish calendar. So you have Yom Kippur and you have Passover as kind of the two heads of the year. The Babylonian head of the year, well, Rosh Hashanah and then Yom Kippur, that period of 10 days. That's the beginning of the Babylonian head of the year. And then you have Passover, which is the prescribed head of the year, prescribed in the Bible. Then you have, all right, so 25th day of the month of Kislev. Now, it's funny because Christmas falls on December 25th, but they don't always fall about the same time. You have a Babylonian year of 12 months, and then you have a Christian year of 12 months. But thanks to Julius Caesar and so forth, the days within each month got goofed a bit, so they don't always coincide. And sometimes there's probably some mathematical method to figure out when they coincide anyway. But, all right, so it's funny to say that Hanukkah is celebrated around Kislev, the month of Kislev, the 25th day, and Christmas is on December 25th, but they're not usually coinciding. Like, for example, right now, we haven't reached Christmas yet, and yet it's already the fourth night. Actually, it's sundown, so technically this would be the beginning of the fifth night of Hanukkah. Now, Jews begin celebrations of a holiday or recognize the beginning of a new day at the sunset of the previous day. And that's specifically Bible-derived. That comes from Genesis 1, where it says there was evening and there was morning one day. So they recognize the evening as being the beginning of the day. I'll give you some vocabulary. The word for evening in Hebrew literally means mixture, and it refers to a mixture of light and darkness. So that's the sunset. So when you light candles, when you begin observing and so forth, like for example Shabbat, that's the reason why it begins Friday evening and then ends Saturday evening is because it begins Friday evening at sunset, and I believe it's in the Talmud. There's a question, well, what defines evening? When does sunset begin? And somebody somewhere, I looked this up before and I forgot, but somewhere somebody said, I'm sure it's in the Talmud somewhere, when you can see 3 stars at night, technically that would define sunset. Because of course, Jews, if nothing else, they're storytellers, and they will also question. There's a reason for the stereotype, I think, that Jews make good lawyers, because they're smart, and they challenge authority. They had to challenge authority because for a long time, they weren't allowed to own land, and they didn't have as many rights recognized under Muslim or Christian eras or kingdoms. So they had to be on their own, and they had to well, look out for themselves. And I think personally that they had to be scholarly. They had to be literate in the language, even not just Hebrew, but just literate in general, because I think that's one way they trusted that you can't get one over on them. If it's written down, if it's in black and white, there's no argument. And they couldn't just depend on somebody else, because who knows if my opinion, who knows if the other person was really on their side or not. I mean, if you're a Christian in a Christian world, you might be able to depend on authority figures. But if you're not, you can't just rely on painted glass, painted pictures on glass or something. You have to be literate in what the text actually says. And Jews still read the Torah every week. Goes through a cycle of all 5 books and then begins all 5 books again. In fact, there's a ritual, there's a ceremony and a parade. The Torah is paraded around at that period when they reach the end, the last weekly portion of Deuteronomy and the first portion of Genesis again. Okay, enough of that. Let's get back to Hanukkah. Okay, so that literacy feeds into what I want to talk about later. So let me get onto that. The rest of this, and then we'll get onto that. All right. So so the 25th day of Kislev. Kislev is its own month. Now, all right. So Jews read right to left. This is going to be tricky. All right. I don't know if I'm personally pointing right on my right, but I don't know if it's going to come out that way. Anyway, I'm pointing on my right. This is my right. This is on my left. There's what's called a shamash candle or helper candle inserted here. Here's the Star of David. You can see the intersecting triangles, and there's a whole I'd love to understand more about these intersecting triangles. You always have a shamash in the middle, and then you have 4 candles here and 4 candles here. Ultimately, 4 candles here, or 4 candle spots here, 4 candle spots here. You start on the right because Jews they read right to left. And on the first night, you light a candle, and then the second night, you have 2 candles that are lit. On the third night, you have 3 candles lit, and so forth, all the way over. And you have the candle here, obviously, and then you take the shamash, you light the shamash candle, and with that, you light the other candles in order from right to left. Now I'm starting to question that. Is that right to left? I'm pretty sure it's right to left. Boy, it's sad. I mean, I'm Jewish and I'm teaching you, and I'm pretty sure it's right to left. Somewhere I remember lighting the candles, and I remember something where I thought it was one way, and then it turns out it was the other way. I'm pretty sure it would make sense. You light them right to left. Look that up. All right. So each night represents something different, specifically different. The first night, at least this is how. This is going by the ritual book from my temple, and I think this is pretty universal. The first candle represents the unity of God. The second candle, I think, represents the 2 tablets. I may be wrong. And then after that, I forget after that. But each night and then I think the third night one night represents peace. I think it's the unity of God, and peace, and another one represents charity, and so forth. They're themes. Each night is a different theme. Right. So there's that, and of course I think a box of Hanukkah candles contains something like 64 candles, because mathematically you have to have the first night this, and then the second night you have two, the third night we have three, and four, and it adds up to something like 64 candles all to have enough candles for all 8 nights. Now, that follows the tradition that's in Leviticus, where it seems that there are some days you celebrate for 7 days, and then for something special, it's prescribed to be an 8th day. Like, for example, circumcision, baby circumcision is on the 8th day, and Passover maybe on the 8th day. There's 7 and 8. 7 seems to be a regular cycle, and then 8 seems to be like a miraculous extension beyond the normal cycle, normal cycle of time. Okay, then I want to mention this this dreidel. Okay, that should be pretty clear. You have, it's a top, basically. You have Gimel. Here's a little bit more. Boy, you're learning a lot of Hebrew language here. Well, some Hebrew language. Gimel, and then that's Nun, which looks like Gimel. That's Nun. Gimel has a little tail on this. Gimel is like this. But Nun is simply, it's tricky to do backwards. I'm watching myself here, but okay, there's Gimel, there's Nun, Shin, Hey, and it goes back to Gimel. Now, as I recall, this is from what I recall, and of course some of it may be myth, so I'm recalling a myth. But when Jews were under occupation by foreign power, from what I've read, they would study, and these things that they were studying were forbidden. So whenever somebody would come around or come nearby, they would switch and just pull out the dreidel and start playing with the dreidel. Oh, we're just playing games. And then when the overseer or whatever would go away, they would go back to studying, because Jews love to study. There's a reason why Jews have earned that stereotype of being smart, and lawyers and doctors and so forth. Okay, so this goes along with a game. It's a pretty simple game. Each person starts off with gold coins, really like little kids and so forth. It's chocolate coins, and they're covered in golden tinfoil. But everybody starts off with a certain number of coins, and you get around in a group. Players go around in a group, and each one, there's a central dreidel, and you spin everybody puts in, I think, 1 coin, and then you take turns spinning the dreidel. You spin the dreidel, and I remember this. If it lands, it spins and then it lands. If it lands on a nun, that means you don't get any of the pot. That everybody's contributed a coin into the pot, and you spin the dreidel. And if you spin and it comes up nun, then it's like none, and conveniently, and you get none. And then the next person. Okay, now if you get hey, which this is hey, you get half. It's very easy to correlate into English words, right? Nun, the letter nun, you get none, and the letter hey, you get half the pot back. Shin, one of them you have to put another one in, and shin, Gimel. I remember Gimel. Oh, definitely I remember Gimel. Gimel means you get the whole pot to yourself. So shin must mean that you put 2 in, or 1 or 2 into the pot. So it just simply goes around until one person winds up with all of it. That's the fun part. There's also a significance as to why these letters specifically, sorry, it's an acronym for the phrase, a great miracle happened. Here, you can tell whether it's a native dreidel made in Israel or if it's a dreidel made outside of Israel. Here's the trick. Nes Gadol. Nes means miracle. Gadol means great. In Hebrew language, you have, as with many languages, you have the noun and then you have the adjective after it. So the phrase is Nes Gadol. Okay, Sham would mean there. Actually, I forget the word for here. Po. Okay, so it would be a letter pei. Instead of a shin, it would be the letter pei. If I have it right, hey would mean the. Ha nes gadol. Oh no, wait a minute. It wouldn't be ha. That would be the. I remember it's a great. Oh, happened. Oh, happened would be hey. Okay. Nes gadol haya sham, meaning nes, miracle, gadol, great, meaning large, grand, haya, happened, sham means there, po means here. So you can tell if a dreidel was made in Israel or not, because in Israel the dreidels would be made to have the letters reading Nes Gadol Haya Po. But of course you can tell this one has a shin, which would be there. Sham, there. So this was probably not made in Israel. All right, so now that I've explained that, I want to share some history. All right, so I found this page. I'll just simply read it because it's just worthwhile reading. Now, this is titled History, the Hanukkah Story. Okay. Although according to Jewish custom, Hanukkah is considered a minor Jewish festival, because it's not mentioned in the Torah. The great holidays, the major festivals and holidays are the ones mentioned in the 5 books of Moses, for example, Passover and so forth. Now, as this probably mentions, I think this will mention later on, Hanukkah is mentioned, but it's mentioned in the book of Maccabees, which is outside of actually the Tanakh. It's an extra biblical. It's almost part of the Bible, but not quite. Okay, that's why it's a minor one as opposed to Passover and Purim and so forth. And Yom Kippur, which is prescribed specifically in the 5 books of Moses. Although, according to Jewish custom, Hanukkah is considered a minor Jewish festival, today it ranks, along with Passover and Purim, as one of the most beloved Jewish holidays, full of light and joy and family celebration. Unlike many Jewish holidays, Hanukkah, also known as the Festival of Lights, is not mentioned in the Bible. The historical events upon which the celebration is based are recorded in Maccabees 1 and 2. 2 books contained within a latter collection of writings known as the Apocrypha. You might have heard of the Apocrypha. In the year 168 BCE, now Jews don't say BC because Christ is not part of the Jewish religion. That's an interesting aspect. A little side note, one of my pet peeves, a little side note. In Judaism, Jews await the coming of the Messiah, the Mashiach. Mashiach literally means anoint, and Mashiach would mean anointed one. Now, you could be anointed for different things, various different things. The priests would be all Mashiachim, because they're anointed ones. They're anointed with oil. Oil will be poured over their heads officially to celebrate or recognize that they've been anointed. Now, during Roman occupation, well, Israel has been occupied a number of times. Like it's like the landlord, it's like under new management. It's like they've been living in Israel, and then first come, was it the Greek? No, the Babylonians come in. Well, yeah, the Babylonians come in, or the what was it? Whatever. Some group comes in, and then they rule over Israel, and then they get conquered by some other group, and so it's under new management. So this other group are now the foreign occupiers, and then they get wiped out. This other group comes in, and now they're the foreign occupiers or whatever. So over time, there's been this belief that from the Jews will come, from the son of David, or from the lineage of David, will come a Mashiach who will drive out the foreigner, who drive out the foreign occupation, and gather together all the exiles, the Jews who had been exiled and left, and they will all gather back into Israel. And there are several things, and the peoples of other lands. This is taken from fragments in other parts of the Bible, other verses, that people will tug, non-Jews will tug at the shirts or sleeves of Jews and ask, well, what is this thing, these commandments that you adhere to? Like, teach me about Judaism, teach me about the Torah, and so forth. That will come, that will happen, and according to the idea of the Mashiach coming, that it not only will be the Mashiach ruling. Here's a huge difference between Christianity and Judaism, the interpretation of the Mashiach. The Mashiach in the Jewish understanding, remember the Christian Messiah, Jesus thing came later. It was a branch off from, a spin off from this. But the Jewish concept was that at some point, somebody will come from the lineage of David, overthrow the foreign occupiers, and people will be, Israelites will be able to celebrate their religion in peace, and literally, be able to have autonomy to be able to celebrate their religion, and the ones who have been exiled will come back, and there'll be peace and so forth. So it's not so well. So this impression of a Jesus being a pacifist leader, that's Christianity. The Jewish concept of a Mashiach is more like a soldier leader type, and not just him, but the Messianic era will be a time when everybody will be adhering to the commandments, all the commandments, and everything will flow. There'll be harmony. We'll have a temple rebuilt. Oh, that's another thing, that the temple will be rebuilt. We'll have a third temple, and so forth. It'll be like King Solomon's temple back again, and there would be offerings, burnt offerings, and so forth. All the stuff in the commandments in the Torah, not just the 10 commandments, but I mean all the commandments in the Torah will be followed, and so forth. All right. So Mashiach. So in the Greek, Mashiach is written. Of course, you don't have the ch sound, so it becomes Messiah. And if I have it right, is it the Greek? Yeah, the Greek. Mashiach translates to Christos, and so that's where you have the Christian thing, that Christos, the two are equated, but the Christians had their own take on it, so don't confuse the two. But it's like Satan. It's weird. It's like the term Satan comes, it's specifically a Hebrew word, but it's not, the Jewish concept of Shatan is totally different from the Christian sense. It's one of my pet peeves. As long as I'm on the topic here, I'm talking about Hebrew. Shaitan simply means adversary, and it's still not a thing, really a thing in Judaism. It comes up in the book of Job. I think that's the only place it comes up. Okay, earlier on in the five books of Moses, you see at least one use of the word Shaitan. It's not it's not a specific character, but there's I think it was a donkey and Bilam strikes at the donkey. Come on, go, go, go. And that's the story where he was sent to curse the Israelites, and the donkey turns around and speaks to him and so forth. I'm not sure if it's specifically called an angel, but there's a figure that stands in front of the donkey. Oh, that's a story. That's an interesting story. The donkey sees this figure. Again, I'm not sure if it's specifically called an angel or a figure or a stranger or something. There's a figure in front blocking the donkey's path, and Bilam can't see it, and so forth. And so the Bilam is furiously trying to strike the donkey. Come on, move, move, donkey, move. And the donkey won't move. And so that figure is characterized as a shaitan, literally as an adversary to Bilam and his donkey. But it's not like this devilish, demonic thing. That's not it. It's simply a something to block. It's like when you're on a certain. It's kind of interesting philosophically. If you're on a path and it's not the right path, you need like a shaitan to block the path, an adversary. And so that may be the only time when the term was actually used. Then, of course, later, much, much, much later in the book of Job, there's a specific character called a shaitan, and scholars have researched and delved into the development from just a term, an adversary, into a specific figure. How did that come about? Well, in Job, you have God, and you have to have this. It's in Jewish circles. He's affectionately nicknamed like the prosecuting angel. Basically, there's an argument going on. Humanity is inherently good, or will be able to overcome, and can deal with what gets thrown in his path, and that's God's argument. And then, like in a courtroom, a lot of ancient Judaism is characterized in either like court, like kingly court verbiage or terminology, or in courtroom verbiage terminology. There's one of those that's in a courtroom terminology. You have a prosecutor that says, no, I disagree with you. Here's my argument to say that humanity is weak and is frail and can't endure da-da-da-da-da. So between the two of them, they throw Job through a tailspin, and it's kind of weird what Job goes through in the ending, but scholars point to that as being the first, one of the first, if not the first, mentions we have of a shaitan being an actual character. And believe me, even to this day, it's not really part of Judaism, this demonic figure. That's Christianity. There's very much the opposite. There's very much an emphasis on the unity of God, and that bad things happen, and it relates all back to God for some reason or somehow. And there's philosophy developed within Judaism to provide possible explanations, and that's one thing I like about Judaism. I see it as more realistic and aware of the actual world. We don't put even ancient Judaism, and I'm talking like Middle Ages and so forth. There wasn't as much superstition. There was superstition, but there wasn't as much blame it. There wasn't a lot of blame. It was kind of like it was focused on reality. Like, how do we deal with reality? And incorporate it like in a healthy way in the religion. How do we relate to the world as Jews in a realistic way? Um, okay, so let me get back to this. Let me get back to this. Okay, all right. Oh, so anyway, 168 BCE. Okay, so Jews don't use BC because it means before Christ, and it's Christ is not part of the Jewish religion at all. It came later. It's a Roman offshoot. I don't want to offend people. I have a suspicion as to where the belief in Christ came from. I don't know if I should put a video out there because it may offend viewers. So I'm on the fence about that. But anyway, so we use the term BCE, which and non-religious scholars would use the term BCE. It means before the Common Era. It's a way of sidestepping. Basically means the Common Era beginning about 2,000 years ago. But they don't want to refer. They don't want to belay any. They don't want to betray any religious connotation. So they use before the Common Era. Okay, so read BCE and BC the same way. All right, so I'll go back. Okay, unlike many Jewish holidays, Hanukkah, also known as the Festival of Lights, is not mentioned in the Bible. The historical events upon which the celebration is based are recorded in Maccabees 1 and 2, two books contained within a later collection of writings known as the Apocrypha. In the year 168 BCE, the Syrian king Antiochus Epiphanes sent his soldiers to Jerusalem. The Syrians desecrated the temple, the holiest place for Jews at that time. Antiochus also abolished Judaism, outlawing the observance of Shabbat, the Sabbath, and the festivals, as well as circumcision. Altars and idols were set up for the worship of Greek gods, and he offered Jews two options: conversion or death, which is pretty pretty familiar to Jews. On the 25th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev in 168 BCE, the temple was renamed for the Greek god Zeus. A Jewish resistance movement led by a priestly family known as the Hasmoneans or Maccabees. As I recall, Maccabees mean hammer, I believe. There's also, I don't know if it's necessarily a Kabbalistic interpretation of it, but Maccabee has also been linked with as an acronym to a phrase. Offhand, I can't remember what the phrase is. It's a Hebrew verse. Mi kamoka ba'elim Adonai. And if you take those letters, Mi kamoka ba'elim Adonai, it could also spell out Maccabee. Okay, family, a priestly family known as the Hasmoneans or Maccabees, the priestly family, led this resistance movement. The head of the family was Mattathias, an elderly man. His son Judah, of course you got to have a Judah, became the chief strategist and military leader of the resistance. Though outnumbered, Judah Maccabee, nicknamed the Hammer, and his fighters miraculously won two major battles, routing the Syrians decisively. Although historians debate the causes and outcomes of the war in which Judah Maccabee and his followers defeated the Syrian armies of Antiochus, there is no doubt that Hanukkah evokes stirring images of Jewish valor against overwhelming odds. Now, I think of the Jew, just like Passover has some, in my mind, an impression sort of like Thanksgiving in terms of how you celebrate around a dinner table with a family. this I think of as like the 4th of July, like we threw out the the British authorities, and we declared ourselves. No, it's actually more like 1812. We had already declared our independence, and then the British come in again, and then we drive them out, and then we it's like an affirmation. No, we have our sovereignty. Um, okay, other themes of the holiday. Okay, image of Jewish valor against overwhelming odds. Other themes of the holiday include the refusal to submit to the religious demands of an empire practicing idolatry, the struggle against total assimilation into Greek culture, and the loss of Jewish identity, and the fight for Jewish political autonomy and self-determination. Hanukkah, which means dedication, it's a feminine form of Hanak, which means dedicate, is the festival that commemorates the purification and rededication of the temple following the Greek occupation of that holy place. There was a period that you had to wait and so forth, and then so that it could be like ritually pure, and then you dedicate the temple. Today, the holiday reminds Jews to rededicate themselves to keeping alive the flame of Jewish religion, culture, and peoplehood so that it may be passed on to the next generation. The miracle of the oil. Now, here's a key thing. That's why 8 days and so forth. Originally, the 8-day holiday was intended to parallel the 8-day festival of Sukkot, which means booths. Sukkah is a booth, and Sukkot would be booths, plural. The books of the Maccabees made no mention of the legend concerning a small jar of oil that unexpectedly lasted for 8 days. Only centuries after the Maccabees' defeat of the Syrians did the story of the jar of oil, which has come to be associated with Hanukkah, very much so, appear in the Talmud. According to the legend, when the Maccabees entered the temple and began to reclaim it from the Greeks, they immediately relit the Ner Tamid. Ner Tamid, eternal flame, I believe is what that means, if I remember correctly, which burned constantly in the temple and has a parallel in our synagogues to this day. In the temple, they found a single jar of oil, which was sufficient for only 1 day. The messenger who was sent to secure additional oil took 8 days to complete his mission, and miraculously, because you got to have a miracle, the single jar of oil, of course, overthrowing a foreign occupation, that's not a miracle, I guess. The single jar of oil continued to burn until his return. The rabbis of the Talmud attributed the 8 days of Hanukkah to the miracle of this single jar of oil. And then, all right, modern observance. I don't know how much I really want to read. Although the practice of lighting the menorah, which is this, also called the Chanukiah, was common throughout much of the 19th century, North American Jews tended to neglect most of the other traditions and practices associated with the holiday. I think I can go on, but I think I've read enough. Okay, so now what does Hanukkah mean to me? Aside from this, instinctively, I remember, in terms of memories, I remember my mom, usually, especially in our old house. I remember it was just the two of us. It should have been with a wider family. I didn't have a large family, and I still wish I could be with my cousins now, at least my kin somewhere. But I remember the dreidel, and I remember being with my mom, and we would have a little kitchen off to the side. Like there was a large living room. It was a very small house. It was barely a house. It was more like a cabin converted into a house. And then off to the side, there was a little, like a corridor room, and that was a kitchen. And I remember the oven, and then a counter. Like it was a stove, and then like a countertop, which I think was just a countertop. And I remember, of course, I had a larger one. There was a menorah I got from a trip to Israel in 1992 when I was halfway through high school. That was much, much larger. That was a huge thing I got in Jerusalem, right in the heart of Jerusalem in one of the market streets. But anyway, I gave that away to somebody who was curious about Judaism. I figured I was in the midst of a move and I didn't really belong. It didn't really have that much of an attachment to me. He really liked it. I don't know if he really liked it, but I figured, I could always get another. It didn't have that much of an attachment to me. So anyway, I would have one of these, and even one that's not as fancy. And you are encouraged, by the way, you're encouraged to put it by the windowsill so that as a display, just like I guess Christians would have Christmas trees and things on display to proudly show their observance. And some of these, it's funny, some of these are actually electronic. I mean, they sell them where you simply turn it on and it's an electric light, which seems really weird. I mean, there's a prescription somewhere that I guess those are fine, but ritually, when you're actually doing the observance, you shouldn't use electric lights. You should actually light the candle. There's something special about that. I understand that because the actual lighting is important. The center light, the center candle there. I just remember the two of us doing it and lighting the candles. And I remember her saying, "You want to light the candles?" And we'll go over and light the candles. And it was just the two of us. And again, I wish there were other people in my family to celebrate it. I was the only child. So that's my memory of that holiday. And I guess, is there anything more to say? Tell me what you think about this. Are you Jewish? Are you intrigued by Judaism? Is this new to you? Tell me in the comments below. I think I've said all that I want to say. I'll leave it at that, okay? So I'll see you next time. And remember, if you like my content, and I think this does factor into my concept of understanding myself and explaining new theories in the universe to you, because if you're not Jewish, hey, hopefully you've learned something. If you like this stuff, please consider subscribing to my channel and clicking the like button, and you know the routine, but no, seriously, I do like the support. I appreciate I have 40 subscribers right now, and I know that no matter what I do, it's not like 200 or 13K subscribers or whatever. It's still 40 people that may or may not, I don't know, watch my videos or enjoy them. I don't know which ones of those enjoy my videos or whatever, but I just value that people are enjoying my videos. So please consider liking and subscribing to my channel, and there's a third, and commenting on my stuff. So I'll see you next time. Bye.